the whole of Riverrun was quiet, but not peaceful. Robb Stark sat at the head of the long table, his young face tired beyond his years. War had aged him faster than winters ever could. Greywind rested at his feet, alert and growling softly, sensing the tension around his master. Robb's mother, Catelyn, stood to his side, whispering words of caution. "Tywin Lannister is not a man to provoke lightly," she said. "He does not forgive, and he never forgets." But Robb's jaw was tight. He butchered the Riverlands, burned our villages, and now he hides behind the walls of King's Landing, letting others bleed for him. I will not wait for his next move. I'll bring the war to him. Catelyn looked at her son. Boo, he was not the boy she raised. He had become a king, hard, focused, and burning with a need for justice, or perhaps vengeance. That night, Robb called a war council. Lords Great John Umber, Roose Bolton, and Edmure Tully were present. The plan was bold mad, some would say. Instead of chasing the Lannisters across the Riverlands, Robb would march south, directly toward Harrenhal, where Tywin had camped with his main army. The risk was enormous. Harrenhal was a fortress, and Tywin Lannister was no fool. But Robb believed Tywin wouldn't expect him to come for him so soon, not after the recent loss of Winterfell to Theon Greyjoy. Robb, however, saw no choice. He could not afford to play defense anymore. He had to break the lion's teeth. Catelyn begged him to reconsider. "You are needed in the north. Winterfell has fallen. Bran and Rickon." Robb closed his eyes. The pain of hearing his little brothers might be dead still haunted him, but he could not stop. "If I chase after Winterfell, I lose the war. If I kill Tywin Lannister, I end it." So it was decided. Messengers were sent, scouts deployed. The young wolf would ride to challenge the Lord of Casterly Rock himself. Word reached Harrenhal within days. Tywin Lannister sat quietly as his raven-haired spy whispered the message. The boy marches south. Tywin's lips curled into a slow smile. Good, let him come. But even he knew Robb Stark was not just a boy. He had never lost a battle. He was clever, faster than his age, and surrounded by loyal bannermen who feared and respected him. Still, Tywin believed he had time, and more importantly, gold. Meanwhile, in the Stark camp, Robb was making more than just war plans. He sent a secret message to the Vale, asking Lady Lysa Arryn to aid him. He knew she hated the Lannisters as much as he did, but whether she would act was uncertain. Robb's march was not easy. The southern roads were full of bandits, many bought by Lannister coin. Supplies were low, and men began to murmur. But Robb kept them focused with his presence. He rode with them, slept among them, ate their rations. Every night, he thought of the Red Keep, of the Iron Throne, and of his father's head on a spike. He would not rest until Tywin Lannister paid for it all. As the armies drew closer, the land between them trembled. Tywin had fortified Harrenhal and doubled his guards. He was waiting, patient as always, playing the long game. But what he didn't know, Robb had learned something new. War wasn't won by honor alone. Sometimes, to beat the devil, you had to dance in the fire. Robb Stark wasn't just coming for a battle. He was coming for a reckoning. Robb's army moved like a shadow through the Riverlands, silent and fast. It wasn't the full northern host. He had left a portion behind to protect the people, but those who rode with him were his most loyal and battle-hardened men. The days were long and the nights colder than usual. Yet Robb pressed forward. He spoke little but watched everything. His eyes had changed, no longer full of the curiosity of youth, but filled with the weight of loss and rage. Roose Bolton rode beside him often, quiet and calculating. "You march like a man chasing ghosts," Roose said one night beside the campfire. "I'm chasing justice," Robb answered, staring into the flames. "And if I have to go through Tywin Lannister to get it, then so be it." Roose smirked. "Justice is a fine word for war. But war has no fairness, my king. It has only winners and bones." That night, scouts returned with troubling news. Lannister scouts had been spotted near Maidenpool. That meant Tywin knew they were coming. Robb clenched his fists. Good. Let him watch. Let him sit behind his walls and wonder when we'll strike. But Tywin wasn't just watching. He was planning. In Harrenhal, he gathered his commanders and gave a chilling order. "Let the wolf come. We'll drown him in blood before he reaches the gates." He sent ravens to the frays, demanding they hold the twins and block Robb's supply lines. He whispered to House Hightower and promised the Reach gold if they turned their spears toward the north. Tywin never fought wars with just swords. He fought with silence, letters, and fear. But Robb was learning. He was no longer the boy who rode to war after his father's death. He had been betrayed, lost brothers, and seen friends die. Now, he was willing to fight dirty. 3 days before reaching Harrenhal, Robb changed course. Instead of going straight to the castle, he divided his army. Roose Bolton would lead a feint from the east, while Robb would circle through the Blackwoods and strike from the west, where the walls were weakest and the guards thinner. It was a gamble, but Robb needed to do what Tywin wouldn't expect. He also sent ravens to House Blackwood, whose feud with the Lannisters had lasted generations. They answered his call without hesitation, joining his calls with fire in their eyes. By the time Tywin realized the maneuver, Robb was already at the edge of Harrenhal's ruined western wall, hidden in the trees. The castle loomed like a dead giant, dark, broken, and cursed by fire long ago. But behind those black stones was the man who had destroyed everything Robb had ever known. At dawn, Robb struck. The Blackwoods lit the trees with arrows, raining fire on the outer guards. Bolton's men charged from the east, creating panic at the front, and from the west, through smoke and chaos, came the direwolf himself. Robb rode with Grey Wind at his side, slashing through surprised Lannister soldiers. It wasn't a battle, it was a storm. Inside the keep, Tywin remained calm. "So the boy wants blood," he said coldly. "Let's give him a river of it." But even he was rattled. He hadn't expected Robb to come this fast, this hard, and with allies from houses once too afraid to defy him. The fight at Harrenhal turned brutal. Stone cracked, flames roared, and men screamed. Robb found himself deep in the battle, face splashed with blood, swinging his sword with a fury that came not from glory, but from pain. Every Lannister he cut down was another ghost he tried to silence. Suddenly he was face to face with Sir Adam Marbrand, one of Tywin's fiercest commanders. Their blades clashed with sparks. "You shouldn't have come here," Marbrand hissed. "You shouldn't have killed my father," Robb growled, then drove his blade through the man's chest. The battle didn't end that day, but something changed. Tywin saw it in the eyes of his men, and Robb saw it in the fear of the Lannister ranks. He had brought the war to Tywin's doorstep, and for the first time, the Lion looked unsure. By the second day of fighting around Harrenhal, the castle was a furnace of smoke, blood, and fear. Robb Stark's army had not broken the walls yet, but they had broken the Lannister soldiers' confidence. Soldiers who'd once laughed at the idea of a boy king now fled or hid behind the crumbling stone. Robb rode through the battlefield like a shadow, Grey Wind at his side, tearing through men who dared step in his way. The wolf's howl echoed like a warning over the chaos, and it seemed even the wind itself carried the stench of burning oil and death. Tywin watched from the highest tower, the calm storm in his eyes. He was not a man easily shaken, but he felt something he hadn't felt in years, unease. This boy, this Robb Stark, fought like no man he had seen. Tywin had won countless battles through strategy, fear, and manipulation. But Robb relied on something different: courage, anger, and loyalty. That combination was dangerous. Robb's mind raced. He knew he couldn't afford a prolonged siege. Supplies were low, and winter whispered on the horizon. He needed to hit Tywin directly, to force a reckoning. "Grey Wind," he murmured, patting the direwolf's flank. "It's time we find the lion." The scouts reported a secret postern gate on the north side, lightly guarded. Robb's eyes lit with hope. "We move at night," he said, "silent and deadly. No mercy, no delay." That night, under a moon cloaked in clouds, Robb led a small contingent of his best fighters. They slit through the darkness, avoiding patrols, and reached the gate. Grey Wind darted ahead, sniffing, sensing danger. A single Lannister guard fell silently to Robb's dagger. Soon, they were inside Harrenhal. The corridor smelled of smoke and decay. Robb's men moved like phantoms, leaving only blood and fear behind. Robb's heart pounded, leaving only blood and fear behind. Robb's heart pounded. He had never come so close to Tywin, and yet he could not let hesitation cloud him. The man who had killed Ned Stark, burned villages, and commanded fear would pay not with gold, but with his life. Suddenly, Torches flared. Tywin had expected them. His personal guard, elite and deadly, formed a line ahead. Robb dismounted, drawing his sword with a hiss. "This ends tonight," he growled. The fight was brutal. Steel clashed with steel. Robb ducked a swing and countered with a strike that sent a man sprawling. Grey wind tore through the rear guards with lethal precision. Robb could feel the weight of every Stark, every slain bannerman, every tear shed for the North driving his blade. Tywin finally appeared, flanked by only a few men, his expression icy. "So the wolf comes to bite the lion," he said calmly, sword in hand. "Do you think your fury can kill me, boy?" Robb met his gaze, eyes burning with years of pain. Not just fury, justice. Their swords collided, echoing through the halls. Tywin was precise, calculating, every strike meant to kill or disarm. Robb was faster, driven by raw emotion, unpredictable in his attacks. Sparks flew and the sound of steel on steel made the walls tremble. "You are strong for a boy," Tywin admitted, his voice cold but tinged with something new respect. "But strength alone will not save the North." Robb pressed forward, slashing, dodging, and driving Tywin back, step by step. The man who had crushed armies was now cornered in his own hall, facing a boy king who would not relent. Suddenly Tywin smirked, a dangerous glint in his eye. "You fight like your father," he said. And in that instant, Robb's heart skipped. Memories of Ned Stark, of honor, of a promise to the North surged through him. But there was no time for nostalgia. A sudden clash sent Tywin's sword flying, and for the first time he was disarmed. Robb pointed his blade at the lion's throat, the tip trembling but steady. Tywin's eyes narrowed, calculating, but he saw no escape. The boy had cornered him, and the Stark's men were only moments away to flood the hall. For once, Tywin Lannister, the master of schemes, the Lion of Casterly Rock, felt fear. Robb's chest heaved. "Your reign of terror ends here," he said. "For the North, for my father, for my people." Tywin said nothing. He studied the boy king with a sharp, dangerous intelligence, realizing that this was not just a man seeking revenge. It was a Stark, a wolf with teeth. Outside, the sounds of battle raged, but inside that hall, it was a standstill. The wolf and the lion, face to face, the future of the Seven Kingdoms hanging by a thread. Robb's hand tightened around the sword. Every moment felt like eternity. The fate of kingdoms, the cries of the dead, and the eyes of his family all rested upon this instant. Robb Stark's blade hovered inches from Tywin's throat, the tension in the hall so thick it could be sliced with a dagger. Tywin's calm facade remained, but his mind raced. He had faced countless enemies, men who thirsted for power, greedy lords, reckless knights, and yet here he was, disarmed, and facing a boy who had the fire of the North in his eyes. "You think killing me will end the Lannister power?" Tywin asked, his voice low but steady. "Even if you cut down one lion, there are others. Gold, armies, alliances. They will rise against you. You cannot win, boy." Robb's grip did not falter. "Perhaps, but I can start by ending you, one lion at a time." His voice shook, not with fear, but with determination. Every scar, every loss, every betrayal pulsed through him. The Red Wedding had not yet happened in this version of events, but the ghosts of the North's suffering haunted him just the same. Tywin's eyes flickered to the doorway. His guards were dead or fleeing, and Bolton's men were moving silently through the corridors, ready to overwhelm the castle. He realized the boy had the advantage not just in courage, but in timing and strategy. Tywin had underestimated the wolf and wolves were patient hunters. Suddenly a loud crash echoed from the main hall. A column had collapsed under the weight of fire and falling stones, signaling that Harrenhal itself was becoming a weapon. Robb saw his opportunity. "Your time is over," he said, moving closer, the tip of his sword pressing against Tywin's armor. Tywin smirked, his mind still sharp despite the danger. "And what will you do, boy? Kill me? Do you think that will bring back your father, your brothers, your home?" His words were venomous, designed to shake Robb, to plant doubt. Robb's heart clenched. Memories of Ned Stark's stern face, Catelyn's worried eyes, and the lifeless bodies of his bannermen flashed through his mind. "No," he said, his voice steady. "It won't bring them back, but it will stop you from killing anyone else." A sudden movement caught Tywin's eye. Grey Wind had leapt onto a guard who tried to strike Robb from behind. The direwolf's teeth sank into flesh, and the man fell with a gurgled scream. Tywin's face twitched. He had underestimated not just Robb, but the creature he rode with. "You have spirit," Tywin admitted, backing up slightly, "but spirit will not save you from the consequences of this war." Robb advanced, and with a swift motion, Tywin fell to one knee, his sword gone, his defenses shattered. For the first time, the master strategist of Westeros was vulnerable. The room was silent except for the distant roar of battle, the crackling fire, and Grey Wind's low growl. "You underestimated me, Tywin," Robb said, his eyes cold. "You thought I was just a boy, but I am Robb Stark, king in the north, and I will not kneel. I will not beg, and I will not fear you." Tywin's lips curled into a faint smile. "Clever boy. You fight like your father, but remember, Starks bleed as easily as anyone. One slip, and it ends." Robb pressed forward, but instead of striking the final blow, he paused. There was a flicker of thought in his mind. Tywin was dangerous, but his death could ignite chaos across the Seven Kingdoms. Lannister forces might retaliate mercilessly against the Riverlands. He had to think bigger than vengeance. He had to think like a king. "Your time is over, Tywin Lannister," Robb said, stepping back, sheathing his sword. "Surrender, or I will burn Harrenhal around you. Your choices brought this upon you. Now live with them." Tywin's eyes narrowed. He realized this boy was not just a fighter, but a tactician, a wolf who had learned the value of restraint. For the first time in years, Tywin felt a shadow of fear, not for his life, but for his power. Outside the hall, the remaining Lannister soldiers hesitated. Harrenhal was crumbling, and their lord was cornered. Some began to lay down arms, others tried to flee into the shadows. The tide had turned, and the North had a chance to claim victory, not just in battle, but in politics. Robb knew this was only the beginning. Taking Tywin alive was a gamble, but it was one that could shift the entire war. The wolf had cornered the lion, but the pack needed to act wisely to ensure this victory did not turn into ruin. As dawn approached, smoke still curling from Harrenhal's walls, Robb Stark stood over Tywin Lannister. The war had changed. The boy had challenged the lion, and for the first time Tywin knew that his schemes might not survive the wrath of a Stark. The dawn light seeped through the shattered windows of Harrenhal, casting jagged shadows over the bloodied hall. Robb Stark stood tall, Grey Wind at his side, while Tywin Lannister knelt before him, his pride battered but not broken. The North had won a staggering victory, but Robb knew better than to celebrate prematurely. The fight was far from over. Robb surveyed the battlefield. Harrenhal was on fire in several places, and the air was thick with smoke and the metallic scent of blood. His men were exhausted, yet the look in their eyes told him they had tasted victory, and nothing would stop them now. Roose Bolton approached, calm and calculating as ever. "The castle is ours, my king, but Tywin Lannister is no ordinary prisoner. He will plot even from behind bars." Robb nodded. He had expected this. Every Lannister was cunning, and Tywin was the cleverest of them all. Yet, something about seeing the mighty lion kneel before a boy king filled him with a strange mixture of triumph and unease. "We keep him alive," Robb said. "He has information, leverage, and perhaps we can use him to end the war more efficiently." Catelyn Tully, who had arrived with reinforcements from Riverrun, frowned. "Alive? After what he's done, he deserves death." Her voice trembled with anger, grief, and the memory of Ned Stark's execution. Robb placed a hand on her shoulder. "Killing him now might satisfy anger, Mother, but it could cost the North everything. If Tywin Lannister survives, he becomes a tool. If he dies, the Lannister wrath could destroy the Riverlands." Tywin's eyes flickered with amusement at their conversation. "Wise boy," he said, his voice calm despite his situation. "You understand war is not just about fighting, but about making the enemy dance to your tune." Robb didn't respond. Instead, he ordered his men to secure the castle and round up the remaining Lannister soldiers. The prisoners were disarmed, humiliated, and made to kneel in the hall of Harrenhal. Robb walked among them, letting them see the wolf who had bested the lion. The sight was a statement of warning to anyone who thought the North could be crushed. Lords of the North, loyal bannermen, and representatives from the Riverlands crowded into the main hall, their faces a mixture of awe, fear, and respect. Robb placed Tywin Lannister in chains in the center of the hall. Even bound, Tywin's presence commanded attention. "We have won, Harrenhal," Robb said, his voice carrying across the hall. "The Lannisters underestimated the North, underestimated me. But victory is not just in taking a castle or killing men. It is in making the enemy recognize your strength and respect it. Tywin Lannister is alive, and he will help us shape the peace that the North deserves." The room was silent. Some lords whispered, uneasy with the idea of keeping a man as dangerous as Tywin alive. Roose Bolton, ever the shadow, leaned closer to Robb. "You are playing a dangerous game, young wolf. One wrong move and the lion will turn this room into a graveyard." Robb met his gaze steadily. "I know the risk, but I also know that fear alone does not win wars. Strategy does." As night fell, Robb stood atop the ruined battlements of Harrenhal, looking out at the burning horizon. Smoke rose from the castle and the surrounding lands, a reminder of the devastation war brought. Grey Wind sat by his side, the direwolf's eyes scanning the darkness as if sensing unseen dangers. Tywin Lannister, chained and silent in the hall below, plotted as always. But for the first time, the master strategist faced a challenge he could not easily manipulate. Robb Stark had not just fought him. He had forced him into a position he could not control. That night, Robb dreamed of the North. He saw Winterfell, snow-covered and empty, his brothers' faces etched into the frozen walls. He saw the Riverlands burning, innocent lives lost in the shadow of war. And he saw Tywin Lannister, not as a man, but as a symbol of the cruelty, greed, and power that plagued Westeros. When he awoke, he made a decision. He would march on King's Landing, not as a boy seeking revenge, but as a king demanding justice. He would not allow the Iron Throne to be filled by tyrants and murderers, while the North suffered. And he would take Tywin Lannister with him not as a prisoner, but as a weapon. The march south would be dangerous, filled with deception, betrayal, and blood. But Robb Stark had learned something crucial. Wars were not won by swords alone. They were won by courage, strategy, and the ability to make the enemy fear the consequences of underestimating you. As dawn broke over Harrenhal, the wolf stared into the distance, ready to lead his men into the heart of enemy territory. Tywin Lannister's roar had been silenced for now, but the battle for the Seven Kingdoms had only just begun. The march toward King's Landing was unlike anything Robb Stark had experienced. His army, though battle-weary, moved with precision and determination. Harrenhal had been a turning point, and word of Tywin Lannister's capture spread like wildfire. Lords who had once whispered about northern weakness now dared not doubt the young wolf. Yet, the closer they came to the capital, the heavier the air of tension became. Robb rode at the head of his column, Grey Wind moving silently beside him. The direwolf's presence was more than protection. It was a symbol of the North, a reminder that the wolf would never bow. Scouts brought news from the surrounding lands. Villages burned, gold seized, and soldiers moved to meet them. Tywin's influence was vast, and even in chains, he was still the shadow that haunted the realm. Robb called a council at a temporary camp near the Blackwater Rush. Roose Bolton, ever quiet, spoke first. "The closer we get to King's Landing, the more dangerous it becomes. Tywin Lannister's allies will not wait. Every city, every lord could be turned against us." Edmure Tully frowned, nervously shifting in his saddle. "And if the city itself refuses to surrender, we could lose half our men before even reaching the gates." Robb's eyes were sharp, burning with determination. "We will not attack blindly. We will use Tywin as leverage. His word carries weight even in chains. If we strike carefully, we can force the throne to bend or fall." That night, Robb and Tywin met in a tent. Tywin sat chained, his posture regal, unbroken. Robb stood, his young face hardened by years of loss and war. "You intend to use me," Tywin said, his voice calm but filled with dangerous intent. "You think I will cooperate? Do you know what you are asking?" Robb's jaw tightened. "I am asking you to save your house from ruin. If you cooperate, the Lannisters will survive. If you resist, everything your family has built will crumble. The choice is yours." Tywin studied the boy for a long moment. There was something different in Robb's eyes. something Tywin recognized instantly, a mind that could match his own. "Clever boy," he said, a faint smile on his lips. "You are not like your father. You are bolder. But boldness can be a dangerous companion to youth." Robb's reply was quiet but firm. "I have nothing left to fear, Tywin. I have lost my father, my home, and countless friends. I fight not for fear, but for justice." Tywin's expression darkened. "Justice, boy, is a dangerous word. It blinds men. But perhaps it suits you. We will see if your justice is strong enough to bend the capital to your will." The next morning, Robb's army approached the gates of King's Landing. The city was massive, its walls gleaming in the morning sun. Soldiers lined the battlements, banners of the Lannisters fluttering, ready to defend the throne. But inside the gates, panic rippled. The capture of Tywin Lannister had shaken even the most loyal of the king's men. Robb sent a herald to demand the parley. The city's response was delayed, tense, but eventually a representative appeared. Sir Tywin Lannister, calm and calculating, though visibly shaken. Robb made his demands clear: safe passage for the north, recognition of the Riverlands, and the release of prisoners taken by Lannisters. Tywin hesitated. "You hold Tywin Starker, Lannister, but the crown will not bend so easily. My brother's word is law in this city." Robb's eyes narrowed. "Then the crown will feel the wrath of the north. I have spared Tywin to negotiate. If the city resists, Harrenhal is only the beginning. Do not underestimate a wolf cornered by justice." Tywin left, visibly unsettled, and Robb's army set camp outside the walls. That night, Robb and his commanders planned the next move. It was clear that the politics of the capital would be as dangerous as the battlefield itself. Tywin, observing from his chains, whispered quietly, "Do not let them see your fear, boy. Use your power carefully, and perhaps the lion can be tamed for now." Robb felt the weight of the moment. The North had never faced a test like this, challenging the heart of the realm with a cunning and lethal enemy like Tywin Lannister. The coming days would decide not just battles, but the fate of kingdoms, and in the shadows of the city walls, spies and schemers whispered. The Game of Thrones was far from over, and the wolf had only just begun to play. The days outside King's Landing were tense, filled with a heavy silence that was broken only by the sounds of training, marching, and the distant clamor from the city. Robb Stark could feel the city itself watching him, as if the walls were alive, whispering secrets to the rulers within. Every movement, every decision could tip the delicate balance between negotiation and slaughter. Inside Harrenhal, where Tywin still remained a prisoner, he spoke little, but observed everything. Even in chains, his mind was a weapon sharper than any sword. He watched Robb carefully, analyzing his every move. "You think the city fears you, boy," Tywin said one night, his voice calm as ever. "But fear alone does not win thrones. The city will test you, your loyalty, your wisdom, your patience. One misstep and all your victories will crumble." Robb, lying awake in his tent beside Grey Wind, stared at the canvas roof. "Then I will not misstep," he muttered. "I will make them see that the North is not a place to be underestimated, that the wolf does not forgive easily." The first test came quickly. A messenger arrived from the city gates. Tywin Lannister's words were carefully chosen, designed to bait Robb. "The crown offers peace," the scroll read. "If the North withdraws and swears fealty, disobey, and the city will fall upon you with fire and blood." Robb's face hardened. Peace on their terms was a trap, and he knew it. "Tell them," he said, speaking to the messenger, "we will consider peace, but only on terms that honor the North, the Riverlands, and the lives lost by your family's greed. Otherwise, Harrenhal is only the beginning." Tywin smiled faintly, a dangerous glint in his eyes. "You are young, boy, but clever. You play the long game even without knowing it. Make them come to you. Let them show their hand." Robb considered this. Tywin's words were always a warning wrapped in opportunity. The city would move, and when it did, he had to be ready. That night, he gathered his commanders. "We will not strike blindly," he said. "We will show the city the consequences of underestimating the North. Bolton, you will patrol the eastern roads, ensuring no reinforcements arrive. The Blackwoods and Tully forces will guard our rear and keep our supply lines safe. I will negotiate while making it clear the wolf is not to be toyed with." Negotiation began at dawn. Robb rode under a banner of truce, Greywind at his side, the direwolf's presence unnerving the Lannister guards lining the streets. Tywin Lannister awaited him, flanked by men-at-arms, his face controlled but pale. "You have the upper hand, boy," Tywin said. "Why risk blood when the city will bend with your threats alone?" Robb's gaze was steady. "Because threats are not enough. They must understand that the wolf acts on principle, not fear. That the North, once crossed, will not rest." Tywin's voice echoed in his memory. "Make them come to you." Robb knew the strategy. It would allow the city to believe it could resist, only to trap them when arrogance led them into the wrong position. Tywin left to confer with the king, and in that moment, Robb turned to Tywin. "You will help me," he said, "because I hold your life in my hands. Together, we can force the city to bow without unnecessary bloodshed." Tywin studied him for a long moment. A wolf who can negotiate with a lion in chains. Perhaps the North has a chance. But remember, boy, every alliance is temporary. Every sword pointed at you can turn. Trust carefully, or you will bleed alone. Robb nodded. He did not fear Tywin. He feared failure. Every misstep could undo all they had fought for. He spent the next days preparing, organizing, and sending scouts into the city to observe movements, eavesdrop on whispers, and gather intelligence. Every step of Tywin Lannister's negotiations revealed cracks, secrets, and overconfidence. Then came the moment. A small garrison of Lannister troops, confident in their numbers, attempted to break through Robb's encampment. The North responded not with blind fury, but with precision. Roose Bolton's men ambushed them, leaving the survivors shaken and demoralized. Word of the wolf's deadly efficiency spread quickly into the city, planting seeds of fear among those who had doubted him. Robb realized then that the game was shifting. The North was no longer just a force. It was a symbol, a reminder that justice, cunning, and courage could challenge even the most powerful houses in Westeros. Tywin, watching all of this from Harrenhal, allowed himself a thin smile. "Perhaps you truly are your father's son, bold, intelligent, and ruthless when needed. The city may fall without a single wall being breached. But beware, boy, the game is far from over, and a wolf, no matter how clever, can be trapped." Outside, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting Harrenhal and King's Landing in a fiery glow. Robb Stark, the young wolf, was readying for the final moves of a game that could decide the fate of kingdoms. The final days outside King's Landing were a storm of tension and anticipation. Robb Stark's army camped in a ring around the city, disciplined, alert, and patient. The city's walls stood tall, but inside, fear and patient. The city's walls stood tall, but inside, fear and whispers of rebellion simmered. Even the most loyal Lannister soldiers were unsettled. The North had proven that the wolf did not hesitate, and Tywin Lannister, the master of manipulation, was now a pawn in Robb's game. Robb rode along the camp, Greywind at his side, observing his men as they prepared for any eventuality. This was not just a siege. It was a demonstration. Every arch, every spear, every strategy had to reflect the strength of the North without provoking unnecessary slaughter. He had learned much from Harrenhal. Brutality alone did not win wars. Careful cunning did. Inside Harrenhal, Tywin Lannister continued to watch, chained but far from broken. "Do you think the city will bow without blood?" he asked one evening, his voice calm, almost conversational. Robb, sharpening his sword, did not look up. "They will bow if they know that resistance is futile and that mercy lies in submission. Fear alone is not enough." Tywin's thin smile spread. "Wise. You are learning quickly, wolf. But remember, every lion in that city is a threat. Do not underestimate their cunning. The Iron Throne does not forgive mistakes." The next morning, Robb sent messengers into the city with clear demands: recognition of the North, safe passage for his army, and release of prisoners from the Riverlands. Tywin Lannister returned with a message: the king would not yield. The city believed it could withstand the wolf. Robb knew the moment had come to act. He did not charge blindly. Instead, he staged a series of feints and skirmishes, creating panic and confusion. Smoke rose from strategic points, archers struck from unexpected positions, and messengers spread rumors of betrayal among the city's defenders. Every move was calculated to make the city's leaders question their strength and Tywin's ability to protect them. Inside the walls, Tywin Lannister and the city council began to fracture. Whispers of Tywin's capture spread fear among those who relied on his counsel. Lord Velaryon and other loyalists argued over whether to negotiate or prepare for a bloody defense. Fear, carefully orchestrated by Robb and the knowledge of his victories, began to tip the scales. Robb, meanwhile, prepared for the final act. He sent a message to Tywin, knowing the master strategist could advise him on the city's weaknesses. "Tell me where to strike," he said, "not with swords alone, but with strategy." Tywin's eyes beamed. The gates to the west are lightly defended, the northern roads are thinly patrolled, and the king's trust in Tywin is fragile. Push them, and they will crumble, but one wrong step, and the wolf will bleed. Robb took the advice seriously. That night, under the cover of darkness, the north moved. Bolton's men advanced along the northern roads, cutting off reinforcements. The Blackwoods and Tully soldiers positioned themselves to intercept any escape or counterattack, and Robb, at the head of a strike team, crept toward the west gate, ready to make the city bend without spilling unnecessary blood. The gate was a small force, overconfident and unprepared. Robb struck swiftly, cutting down the guards and raising his banner as a signal to the city. A roar of grey wind echoed across the walls, chilling the defenders. Robb's presence was undeniable. The wolf had arrived, and the lion was nowhere to be found. Panic spread quickly among the city's leaders. Tywin Lannister, realizing the city could not withstand the wolf's strategy, sent a desperate message proposing surrender. Robb, with Tywin's silent approval, negotiated terms favorable to the north and the Riverlands. The Iron Throne's power remained, but under strict conditions. No more unjust taxes, no more executions of the North or its allies, and a recognition of Stark authority. When the gates finally opened, Robb entered King's Landing, not as a conqueror, but as a negotiator. His army remained disciplined outside the walls, a reminder of the cost of resistance. Tywin Lannister, still chained, was brought forward to demonstrate the North's dominance and the price of underestimating a wolf. The city bowed not out of love, but out of respect and fear. Robb not out of life, but out of respect and fear. Robb Stark had challenged the lion and emerged victorious. He had taken King's Landing without the Red Wedding's betrayal, without the needless slaughter of innocents, and without losing the respect of his bannermen. Tywin, silent but calculating, met Robb's eyes. "You have done well, boy. Perhaps you are more than just a Stark. But remember, the game is never truly over. The throne always hungers and enemies always wait." Robb nodded. He knew the war was not truly over, but he had changed the game. The North had risen, the Riverlands had justice, and the wolf had shown that courage, cunning, and loyalty could topple even the greatest lion. As he stood atop the walls of King's Landing, grey wind at his side, Robb felt the weight of the moment settle upon him. The young wolf had challenged Tywin Lannister and won not just with sword, but with strategy, patience, and heart. And in that victory, the Seven Kingdoms had glimpsed the power of the North and the wolf that would never bow. The story of Robb Stark's reckoning with Tywin Lannister would be remembered for generations, a tale of courage, cunning, and the unyielding spirit of a wolf who dared to challenge the lion and won.